Okay, so let's talk really quickly about data collection and analysis. Start from the beginning. And within data collection and analysis, this is our third category of tools for tasks. And this is basically where we're trying to get students to interact with the real world. And one of the ways that we do that is we actually have them gathering real world information in order to make decisions. So when we're talking about data collection, it's usually the students can either go out and collect their own data, or they can find existing data sets. So for example, collecting their own data, a lot of students will kind of do the bean growth activity where they actually will plant a bean and then they'll measure the growth of it. So this is a very common one in elementary. It could also be at the secondary level where you're collecting information for your science lab reports. So this is a big thing there. Or finding existing data sets. So one of the common ones here would be like calculating baseball statistics. So this is very common in math classes. So you could do that with like fantasy football or lots of other different ways, or even computer science in order to establish like different algorithms for, figuring out who the best team is in terms of baseball or football or whatever else. And then data analysis would actually be finding patterns or trends. So what's common about these? What do we find constantly happening here? So for example, if I did the bean sprout activity and I had half of my students using fertilizer and half of them using compost, what are the differences there? How can we find patterns and trends between different types of fertilizer, like what seems to be working the best? Or even finding patterns and trends in terms of like for social studies, looking at different data, so trying to see immigration and how has immigration changed over the years, especially from different countries. So if you start looking at different patterns and trends, like there are really some really great images online where you can see like what immigration has looked like to the United States. And I'll try and find one here in just a second to show you. And this can work with words or ideas or numbers. So, and I'll show you some examples of words in just a moment. But looking at how even poetry is used and commas are used to express different ideas. So that would be some analysis there. And basically, the data analysis would basically be to classify or sequence and relate things to each other. It's really all about this whole idea about organizing and looking for patterns in data. So we're asking students to draw conclusions on their own based on the data, and it's not limited to numbers. It's kind of patterns about all different types. So one example here, if we're looking at some different like school and science projects, here are some different things that you could actually collect data about. So what's in static electricity, how is the weather change, what's inside the earth, how do animals spend winter. So lots of different science projects and experiments that you can kind of look at here. This is an example here of statistical analysis in order to rank baseball players. So let's take a look at this teaching example.
This is our project for today. Who was the greatest Yankee home run hitter?
I'm Trudy Denton. I teach at Staples High School in Westport, Connecticut.
You're asked to create a baseball dream team for your fantasy baseball league. The last spot you have to fill has to include a great home run hitter. So what I want you to do is study the following home run records for these 4 New York Yankee greats. Which player is the greatest home run hitter? Why did you choose this player? And in order to come to your conclusion, you might want to use graphs and statistics to support your choice. Then, after you identify the greatest, you need to rank the 4 players and describe your rationale for the ranking.
How can you look at this data and decide who's the best home run hitter? The point of the lesson really was to give students the experience in comparing and analyzing distributions using graphical displays.
Which kind of graph do you want to make first? Do you want to make a box plot or
Yeah, I think a stacked box plot would be good.
Yeah.
They were given the task of putting the data into box plots, observing what the data told them, both in terms of the shape of the data, the center of the data, how spread was it, or is there anything unusual? And I also asked them to make a decision about what they saw. In other words, who was the greatest home run hitter? What makes you think that they're the greatest hitter? And to use what they observed from their analysis to draw that conclusion.
Isn't it kind of unfair that Roger Maris was around for like 6 years and Lou Gehrig did it for like double that length?
Okay.
Isn't that like
So what does that mean? How do you reconcile that?
Either Babe Ruth or
Yeah,
Nick-
Mickey Mantle.
yeah?
Sports is just full of readily accessible data. And the figures, the names that we used, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Lou Gehrig, are icons, American heroes that most people have heard of. It's a relatively familiar set of numbers for them to access and to deal with.
I think the most important thing is how Gehrig went to 0.
Yeah.
So that means some years he just didn't hit any, and like
I find the pairing and the sharing a really great strategy. They sit every day in pairs.
Okay, so you can see how using data is kind of inspiring students. They're also using technology in order to analyze different elements. There are a lot of different ways that you can use technology in order to help with your data collection analysis. So this is another example here where I've done a bean plant growth data. So this is at the elementary level, and where students can actually kind of change the light, the water, and then they can see how that changes the growth here. You can even add your compost and your fertilizer, the examples that I was talking about before, and even comparing different types of seeds to how they react to different types of light and water. So this is a really nice way to expedite that process, and then your students can kind of use this as an example and then figure out their own experiment to see who can grow, the best beans or plants or whatever it looks like. There are tons of different examples of how you can use this in lots of different subject areas. So every subject area can use actual data to help make their lessons a lot more engaging and a lot more realistic. So there was another one that used, in terms of statistics, they were looking at, in physical education, they actually measured their heartbeats at before and after physical activity, and they did this over an extended amount of time in order to see the improvement once they started exercising. How did that improve their resting heart rate? So it actually had an impact on their health. But other ways that you can do it throughout here, you can see some of these different examples like, for example, looking at different social studies, looking at parties of presidential election winners and recording them for each election year. How did this change? What are the different things that may have influenced them for those particular years? Does it really go Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat? What does that look like over the years? Even looking, like I was talking about before, in terms of immigration and how that changes. So lots of different examples here, even looking like with English language arts, like how are kind of themes coming across, and I'll show you one that you can use with this. So when you do use data analysis, it allows you to make, it makes your real data, it makes that learning much more meaningful and allows you to provide it in a visual way. And we're going to show you Inspire data as well. And these types of tasks can teach problem solving. So this is Taggle. And I copied and pasted the U.S. Constitution within here, within the United States map, which is kind of cool. But the more often that a word is used, the larger it becomes. So you can see that free, powers, states, people, laws, time, right, new, right. So you can see all of these different things that are larger, but then you can see the things that are smaller. So things that are smaller, like British or Britain or common or enemies, evil, liberty, all of the are tyrannies. So you can see these different things, the different themes that are kind of coming out during the revolution, and how that may impact how you read this from now on. This would be another example for language. If you actually visit the Project Gutenberg site, the really awesome thing about this site is it has tons of free books that you can download. So like here, this would be In the Clouds for Uncle Sam. So I can actually take plain text, and so here is the entire book for free. So I can take this and copy and paste it. And once I copy and paste it in here, then you can start to see, again, the different themes that come through. So this is like Macbeth right here. So it shows you the different themes that are coming up, as well as this one. Looking at Shakespeare, you can see like the thumb and Montague. So this is obviously from Romeo and Juliet. And this is Don Quixote in Spanish, so anything with, this would be particularly fantastic. The reason why language examples are so great with the word part is it allows you to say, okay, what are the big words that I need to cover in order to make sure students understand them? So what does this word mean? What does bien mean? So trying to figure out, and I'm not a Spanish language, I can't read Spanish, so I can't really tell you what these different things are. But like looking at, okay, do I need to talk about thee and thy and thou, what those mean in terms of English, Old English, and how that relates to kind of what we're talking about, or defining different things. Like, do I need to define tyrant because it's used quite a bit, and my students may not know what tyrant means. So those are all good things for you to kind of use. This is an example of the ISTE standards and what things kind of come through here. So different tools for data analysis. Inspire Data, which is one of my favorites. Tinkerplot is also fantastic. Let me show you this video because it allows you to see in terms of probability.
Randomly drawing a number, putting it up here, and then drawing a second time. That's the rolling twice part. The results of those two rolls are sent over to the results table where both individual rolls and the two rolls joined together are visible. Let's speed this up. Altogether, this sampler simulates rolling 2 dice, a total of 5 times. The sampler seems... Are you more likely when you roll 2 dice to get a...
So you can see some different information here, and the cool part is it actually totals it up for you in a nice visual way where you can see how many times 4 was rolled, how many times 5 was rolled, how many times you got to 11, and which numbers you're most likely to get to. So that's why this one, I really like Tinkerplots, and it has some really great potential for math, particularly middle school math, is fantastic. Anything for visualizing verbal data, Wordle, Tagxedo, Taggle, and there are other visualization tools here that you can kind of check out from Mashable. And these allow you to, like Flickr Vision, which combines Google Maps and Flickr to provide real-time view of where it's used in the world or see where particular tweets are coming from. So there's a lot of overlay in terms of like social media and how you can use those different elements in your teaching. So where can data come from? Data can come from 2 different places. So you can collect your own data. You can even do this through surveys or questionnaires, having your students actually go out and be able to collect this information, or sensor-based data. Measurements would be another one. So if you're measuring your own data, Google Forms is another great way that you can do that. So this is just forms.google.com. Very, very simple. I can create my test form here. And lots of different question options, so I can do multiple choices, drop downs, even different scales that I can have people slide between. And like I said, lots of different options. You can even add like your own text or images through here and make it required or not. So I can say, what is your level of technology comfort? And then I can have hate it and love it. And so then make this a required question, and we can kind of see what this looks like. And it shows you the responses afterwards as well. And again, like different color palettes that you can change, and we can preview it to see what this looks like. So here's what it looks like in the end. Very, very simple. And then I can send it out via email with a link, or even embed the actual form in there. So very quick, simple. Google makes surveys really easy for you to be able to use and collect information and data. Or you can find existing data online. Again, looking for databases online. There's a really great one. I think it is Bud Project. Here it is, Project Budburst. And so this actually tracks when flowers are blooming around the world, so that you can actually see what that looks like. So you register online, and then you publish online, and then you're able to see what that looks like. Let's see if it goes here. So it'll show you when things are blooming at what particular times. So again, really cool options here for different ways to even collaborate with others across the world, and it even shows you seasonal visualizations. And so I should be able to kind of scroll around here, and it should be able to be coming up and down. We'll wait for that to load for just a minute. But existing books, poems, even looking at newspapers and searching websites for information and compiling it. And types of data collection. Again, you can take measurements, survey different people, looking for different trends, collecting quotes about different particular topics and what people are saying, looking up parties. Again, more examples of data collection, heart rate monitors. We've kind of already talked about these, asking people what their favorite things are or collecting data from an assignment. So let me see if I can find really fast the examples that we were talking about for immigration. That one is great, but there should be some kind of, here we go. So this would just be an example. It says select a foreign-born group to see how they settled. It's not working in that. One of the biggest things that you can always do if something's not working in a particular browser, then try a different browser. So here's our seasonal behavior. So you can kind of look through here and see when different things are changing. So you can see May, when things are a bud burst. So that's just kind of a really cool visual that they put together through National Geographic. That's a really cool fund right there. And let's see if we can find the immigration one and show it to you. All right, so since I'm not having Flash, then it's not working. But what this will allow you to do is actually scroll through. I'll include the link in the class prep so that you can check it out.